Hello, my name is Frank DeLuzio, and welcome to Frank's Fiction, the book review podcast. This is part two of this mini series. I like to kind of call it an EP for podcast. So, you have your albums, your full length albums with the bonus tracks and stuff. And then you have your EP, which has a few really good songs. You got some bangers on there. That's sort of what this season one of coming back for the podcast is. I just kind of want to, put a little taste out there, see if you like it, if you love it, if you hate it, whatever thoughts or feelings you have on it. And if you have a minute, it would be greatly appreciated if you reviewed it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any streaming platform you're listening to, or hey, do it on all of them, and you would be super special awesome for that. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Franks_fiction. I realized a little bit too late. I accidentally said that part twice on the last episode and I was spelling it out. I don't think you guys are idiots. I'm the idiot. I forgot that I had said that I record the book review first, and then later on when I'm actually publishing the episode in present time, that's when I record this part. And for some weird reason, I didn't think about re-listening back to the episode, or at least the beginning. Well, I did that this time, and I did not mention the social media, so that's why I have it up here. I do greatly apologize for doing that. Very quick little life update of the week. So I made fried Oreos for the first time in my life. I am so guilty of overspending on those, and I didn't have to now because now I know how to make them. I didn't realize how easy of a recipe that is. So for people that were sending me recipes online for funnel cakes and fried Oreos and all that junk, thank you. My heart does appreciate it. My sweet tooth heart. I was able to spend some special time with a couple of my best friends recently, which felt really nice. It's been a long time since the three of us were able to get together. And of course, we had to go to Barnes and Noble. We got some food. We had to go to Target. I had to look at books. I actually didn't look at books at Barnes and Noble, but Target I did, and I got a few. Oh man, I actually counted today. I really wanted to know how many books that I own that I haven't read yet. And if you want to take a guess, it's probably even more than what you think. I know the exact number now. It is 456 books. It's a lot of books. I have a lot of books to read, a lot of books to review. It shows I definitely have content at least, which is great. I won't run out of ideas probably. If I keep making book reviews on this podcast, it's going to be hard to run out of a book. They make so many books every year. To piggyback off of that, I wanted to just mention some little services that I started doing. So for a while, I've been doing freelance editing for manuscripts or for even just smaller pieces. If it's like 1 to 3 pages, that's perfectly fine. If it's a poem, perfectly fine. I will edit it for you. If you need a service like that, you can private message me on Instagram, or you can email me at franksfiction@yahoo.com. And I also, because of so many books that I have to read and review, and I like to do detailed reviews, I have a passion for that. And there's so many wonderful authors that reach out to me about their books. And trust me, I want to get to all of them. I want to review them all, but there's only so much time in the day. So I did start doing a little bit of a service where if you want to hire me to write a well thought out book review, I will do that for a small fee. I added that along with my freelance editing. But also to add to that, I like to kind of see a little bit of a sample first. So maybe a first chapter or something, only because the whole point of book reviews is you want book reviews that are going to help the book. I don't want to go out of my way and rate a book really negatively and just hurt its reputation. Books take a long time. They take a lot of effort. I really value that in authors and in writers. If I'm reading the first chapter of a book and it's just not sitting well with me, I'm just not feeling it, I don't feel right to do a paid review for that. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't help you as the writer, and it just doesn't feel good to do. And I'm not trying to take people's money and then just harming the book's reputation when it doesn't need to be, because some books just aren't meant for certain readers. That's all for updates this week. I want to just get straight to the book because, man, this book goes in so many directions, and I can't wait to share my thoughts with you. So without further ado, let's get to the episode. All right, everyone. So today's book is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And the same thing that happened with the Ruth Ware book, and that being the very first book that I read, this is also the very first Lisa Jewell book that I read. I've heard really good things about Lisa Jewell, that she writes good thrillers. I finished this book in about 3 to 4 days, which is very impressive because normally it takes me at least 1 week to finish a book. In A Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware took me, I think, almost a month to finish because, like I said in that episode, there was a little bit of a slow burn that definitely made me read the book slower than I typically would, I guess. So I'm going to go over quick the layout of the show if you're new here. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a spoiler-free review so that if you want to read this book, you can listen to this part, you can pause the episode, go read the book, then come back and listen to all the spoiler-filled parts. It's going to be spoiler-free. There's going to be a little transition noise. There might be an ad there, there might not be. Then it's going to be a spoiler filled review. And that's where I'm going to get into all the juice. I'm going to get into all the goss like people like. And with this episode specifically, we have a few book questions I want to go over. Of course, we're going to have the star rating somewhere towards the end. And this is just my own personal opinion, of course. Everyone's going to have different opinions on the book and different star ratings. And I think that's okay. But I also wanted to bring up some reader theories that I saw online that I think are quite interesting and noteworthy to mention. You might be wondering, Frank, what is this book about? Let me read the blurb for you, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning. It's a little bit on the longer side. When a famous podcaster interviews a stranger promising to divulge the story of a lifetime, I never breathe long enough. Redo. When a famous podcaster interviews a stranger promising to divulge the story of a lifetime, secrets emerge that threaten to expose the truth of the lives they both worked hard to project and protect. Celebrating her 45th birthday at the hot new local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summer crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They are, in fact, birthday twins. A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, this time outside Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcast and thinks she might be an interesting subject for her series. She is, she tells Alex, on the cusp of great changes in her life. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep going on the project. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie is hiding some very dark secrets, and before she knows it, Josie has inveigled her way into Alex's life and into her home. But as quickly as she arrived, Josie Fair disappears. Only then does Alex discover that Josie has left a terrible and terrifying legacy in her wake, and that Alex has become the subject of her own true crime podcast, with her life and her family's lives in grave danger. Reading this blurb back, I just noticed that after reading this blurb, I probably didn't even have to read at least maybe 3 or 4 chapters of this book. Like, a lot of that are literal plot points in the book. It's kind of like when you watch a movie trailer and they just give away a lot of the movie without even you watching the movie yet. So I just noticed that they do give a lot in this blurb. They probably could have left maybe like the second half out at least, but hey, it's not my book. I don't know if there's really much more I can give at this point when it comes to not spoiling anything. There's so many different things that happen, and I can't wait to get into those. When it comes to the entertainment, I was definitely entertained. Like I said, I finished this book very quickly. When it comes to the characters, well, there's going to be a lot of talk about the characters. There's a lot of different characters as well. So Alex and Josie are essentially two of the main characters in the story. You have Alex being the podcast host, and you have Josie being the one that she's interviewing, and aka her birthday twin. And that's essentially what the podcast is supposed to be about. Then you have Alex has a husband named Nathan. Josie has a husband named Walter. Josie's mom is in the story. Her name's Pat. Alex has 2 kids and Josie has 2 kids. It's definitely a little bit of parallel in there. You can tell that Alex and Nathan are more of a middle class, upper class, maybe even upper class, I would say, family. They definitely have money. And Josie and Walter, well, not so much. I guess one thing maybe I can mention too is that Alex's podcast focuses on women who go through struggles and then end up living successful careers. But Alex wants to change this up a little bit. Alex has done this formula for quite a long time. She wants something new, she wants something exciting. And that's kind of where Josie comes in and promises, hey, I can give you that. And man, does she. I thought the writing style was done well. Going back to the characters, actually, I don't know how many of them I actually liked. I will go more in depth with that. I wanna say I liked, before I was recording this episode, I was thinking about, well, I liked Alex at least, right? And then the more I think about it, I don't know. And I don't know if any of these characters were supposed to be likable. Maybe you're supposed to feel bad for certain characters, but it was tough. And maybe because it was a dark story, it was a tough story to get through. One thing that I liked that they incorporated in this story is they have these podcast interviews throughout the book. They have this like Netflix special going on throughout the book, and you don't really know exactly why. You can maybe hypothesize why it's happening. But I thought it was an interesting mix. It gives you a mix of podcasting, it gives you a little bit of mix of true crime feeling. And me being a podcaster again, that's something I can definitely devour. And yeah, I definitely liked that about the story and its fast pacedness. And I think that's all I can really mention for spoiler free because I don't want to give away too much. I really recommend that you read this book, whether my rating is a 1 star or a 5 star that you'll find out later. I think, I always say you should read the book yourself too, if you're curious enough, or if the story sounds interesting to you, or if this is your type of genre, which this is a thriller slash suspense. So without further ado, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, it's going to be time for some spoilers. Get ready. Today's episode is sponsored by Zencaster. So, a few years ago, I started a podcast, and one of my podcasting friends told me they record through Zencaster. I guest starred on his show. It was super easy to join through the invite link. I just plugged in my microphone and we recorded. When I listened to the episode, the sound quality was chef's kiss. I knew going forward I had to use Zencaster to record episodes for my own show. It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. If you have thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Go to zencaster.com/pricing and use my code FranksFiction, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And we're back. So I think it's a good idea to go through some of the plot points and then we can kind of dissect from there. So Josie is having dinner with Walter. And like I said before, Walter is her husband. What we find out later on is that Josie met Walter when she was only like 14, 15 years old. And I think they officially started dating on her 16th birthday. Walter is like 40 something when they meet. I think he's 42. And I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm just trying to reserve right now, but I have a lot of thoughts on that. Don't worry. We're going to definitely dive more into that, but I kind of want to get through how the story portrays my thought. How it sounds bad, right? Let's just cut the chase. Like it sounds bad, and I before I share my opinions on it, I kind of want to show how Lisa Jewell paints it in the story at least. And maybe this isn't her personal thing, it might just be the characters in the book, but I kind of want to get through that first and then talk about my thoughts on that. But yes, she met him at a very young age and they've been together since. And then you have Alex was having dinner at the same restaurant with her husband Nathan and a bunch of other people. I think it was some family, it was some friends. Now, Alex goes to the ladies' room. I think Josie comes in behind her. And I try to think, if I was Alex, if I went to the bathroom and some guy went to the bathroom after me and told me, we're birthday twins. I noticed it was your birthday. It's my birthday too. And that's why I'm here celebrating. And we were born on the same day and at the same hospital. I probably would have been polite and then just excused myself. I don't think I would have went as far as Alex and Josie went with their relationship. I know a few people that have the same birthday as me and even born on the same year or very close, which, by the way, Josie and Alex, I can't remember if they're the same exact age. I think they're trying to tell us that they are, but for some reason, Alex sounds a lot younger to me. But, you can definitely comment and let me know if Alex actually is younger than Josie or if they're the same age, but it's just they aged in very different ways because they make Alex sound very beautiful and almost young sounding with her physique and just with how she carries herself a little bit. But Josie sounds like a lot older looking and she wears all denim and just very like a back then style, which maybe is what makes her sound older. I'm going to throw a little bit of a theory that I saw out there right now when it comes to this whole scenario. So, a theory that I saw online had to do with, was Josie lying already the first moment they met? And I actually didn't think about this. Like, I just assumed that they really were born on the same day in the same hospital. What if that wasn't even true? Because people who are quote unquote murders or evil or something, I mean, they have no problem lying. Josie's truth is questioned throughout this whole novel, and I think it's supposed to make the reader guess whether or not she's telling the truth in any moment, or if every single time she talks is a lie. There are people like that in the real world, and someone who is calculating and who's manipulative will definitely use that, as they'll definitely be good at lying and deceiving people. So I didn't even think about that she might not have even had the same birthday. And if that is the case, if that was Lisa Jewell's point, then wow, like this podcast, which relied on them being birthday twins as the subject, wouldn't have even been a real thing. So after the two meet, Josie goes home. She checks out Alex's podcast. One of the episodes, they point out a certain quote from a woman that was a guest on the show that definitely comes into play later on. And it has to do with, there was a guest on the podcast. She talks about being in an abusive relationship and how her life actually, she started to feel more free and powerful when he unexpectedly passed away at a somewhat young age, because she thought and felt that she had to live that way the rest of her life and feel trapped. And now she didn't feel trapped and she ended up being very successful after this death. And Josie, I think, takes that a little bit to heart, but we'll get to that later. So Josie pitches herself to Alex about sort of like being a twist compared to Alex's normal material, which Alex was looking for anyway. And Josie claims that she's going to be a woman that's making big changes in her life, which is something that was already in the blurb. That meeting on the birthdays was already in the blurb. They definitely put a lot in the blurb, a lot more than I probably would have if it was my book. But one of the first interviews and one of the first parts of their episode, or of Josie's episode that Alex is interviewing her about, that's where we do find out about Walter's age. I had to look it up. He was 42 and Josie was 15. And it's really hard to not share my opinion right now, but I need to get to the ending and then kind of go back to that because it's really hard. It's just really hard to stomach. So one issue that Alex goes through, and this is throughout the book, but you kind of get a little taste at the beginning, that Alex seems to have a good life, but there's this one off thing, and that is Nathan goes on these drinking benders. He ends up not responding to Alex for very long periods of time. He just gets blackout drunk. Hotel staff have found him and had to wake him up. And then eventually Nathan comes home. And if that was my partner, you would not be my partner. I guess I'm just gonna stay. I probably should just be stating my opinions right now, but I have to say that one, that it's just something I personally wouldn't tolerate. I definitely would acknowledge that he needs help. And as I was reading this novel, I don't think that's ever really mentioned. I think Alex notices it's a problem, but I don't really see her having those conversations with Nathan, because I know if it was me with my partner, I definitely would be having communication and conversations about, hey, like, this is a problem. And I don't care how much money you make or if you're the breadwinner in the family, but this is a problem and this is affecting our relationship and our marriage. And we have kids. You cannot be acting this way. But instead of Alex having these conversations with Nathan, which I guess when you look back on it, it's like, when is she going to have the conversations with him? Because he's either doing these benders or he's working. It's like, how does she catch him? Like, they barely have, they have like these pockets of time for communication. So it sounds rough. But then at the same time, she goes over these pros and cons about staying with Nathan, and there's more pros. And I think part of the pros is that Nathan doesn't question Alex's spending. Like, it sounds like she lives a good, lavish life where she doesn't have to struggle. Probably compared to someone like Josie, who has definitely faced some financial struggles and certain personal struggles growing up. But instead of Alex talking to her husband, instead what happens is she goes along with this podcast, even though she kind of notices something seems to be a little off with Josie as a person, but she figures, what the hell, I could use this change, distract myself. Let's do this episode. It could be something really big. So when Josie is talking about her relationship with Walter, and Josie even talks about being groomed and being trapped by a married man, yes. So when Josie had met Walter, I guess to give a little bit of history, Walter was working at their house or something. He was a contractor, and he was already married with 2 children when he met Josie, who was a literal child, and left his wife to be with Josie. And at this point, I just have to share my personal opinions. And I'm just going to skip a little bit ahead to how they frame Walter and my problems with that, because I can't excuse it, because Alex, I feel like, has a very accurate view on this through most of the book, which is that Josie was groomed by a predator, by a pedophile. There's parts towards the end of the book where Walter is kind of framed as this good dad, and I have a problem with that. And there's even a part where they essentially claim that, I want to say it's Josie's mom who says it, and then Alex just kind of goes along with it. The fact that they end up saying that Josie wasn't actually a victim and that she manipulated Walter to be with her. And my immediate thoughts on that is that it's bullshit. Children can never consent. That is an opinion it's an opinion, and it's a hill that I'm going to die on for the rest of my life. And I don't even need kids to feel that way. I felt like she was a child that was harmed by a grown ass man. And I didn't appreciate that the book, towards the end, it tried to make it sound like that Josie was just 100% this villain and manipulated Walter. I don't feel like a child could manipulate an adult. And I feel like if that is the case, I feel like the only type of person that would be manipulated by a child romantically is a pedophile. And I remember when I was reading this book, this piece of it was really tough, because I was like, I don't know how much this is going to impact my rating on this book, because I didn't know. It was either one of two things. It was either that Lisa Jewell really felt this way, which I tend to not believe that. I think what really was going on was just the fucked up characters in this book and their thought processes. But I thought it was a little strange that Alex did feel like Josie was being groomed, to then towards the end, it was more like a, nah, like, she's just a manipulative basic bitch. Regardless of what Josie does in this book, and we're going to get into that, I think she was a victim in this situation. And regardless of how Walter treated the kids, which the kids' names are Roxy and Aaron, and regardless of how he was a father to them, if he was a good father or whatever, it doesn't matter to me, because I'm never going to excuse pedophilia. So after that very interesting interview between them, Nathan starts noticing, so when he actually is home, He checks their home cameras and he starts to notice some red flags about Josie. So Nathan ends up showing Alex some footage from their doorbell cam. And I guess it's Josie. She's going through their recycling and she takes a magazine and ends up taking something else. Now, if I was Alex and I had seen this, personally, I would have ended the project. And yeah, I would have thought maybe this is a project that could make me famous, maybe it could make me money. But when someone is starting to act like that, it's very sus. It's very suspicious. If it's anything that seems like it would be a danger to my house or my husband or my kids, you got to go. Like there I just that to me was a very eerie thing, and I mean, it could have been a misunderstanding, but to me I definitely would have felt some ick and probably would have said sayonara Josie, but not Alex. Alex, we wouldn't have a book if Alex did that. So Alex is like, I'm sticking to this project no matter what. And I don't see anything, I don't see anything weird with it. Maybe it's even a little flattering. So Josie and Walter, they end up having some conversations. And I guess, sorry, before they start having some conversations, Alex invites Josie and Walter over for dinner, where there's kind of an alternative motive to that. It's not necessarily Alex being a friend to Josie. And I think that's how Josie takes it. She's thinking, oh, well, Alex is my friend, where Alex is viewing Josie as a podcast subject and thinking, oh, like, I got to interview Walter to kind of get his side of the story on this and his thoughts on being attracted to Josie at such a young age. So Josie and Walter, they end up having some conversations. You could tell that Josie's definitely starting to have some problems with Walter in her current life. I think she's starting to romanticize and fall in love with the way that Alex lives. I think she views Alex as a strong woman and a good person. You could tell that she doesn't really respect Nathan. She's not really respecting her own husband anymore. She's starting to see almost these similarities. She feels that Walter is kind of like a disappointment to her. And when Alex, for some odd fucking reason, decides to tell Josie about Nathan's drinking problems, which I thought Alex had other friends. Like, I don't know why she would go to Josie. I mean, she even had sisters, but I guess maybe the sisters would be more judgmental about it and she thought Josie wouldn't, but boy was she wrong. Like, Josie is not only judgmental but definitely feels like she could do better, that Alex could do better without Nathan. It takes some coaxing to get Walter to go over for dinner, but Alex promises that Nathan will be there so it doesn't feel like Walter's just with a bunch of ladies. Well, fast forward, Nathan doesn't end up showing up. He goes on another bender. I think he's been on a few at this point. He had promised he'd be at that dinner and he didn't show up, which I'd be breaking up with Nathan. I definitely, if I didn't break up with Nathan before these benders, I definitely would be breaking up with Nathan now, because if I tell my partner that there's a really important event and I need you there and you don't show up, it's done. Like, I don't even know if there's room for discussion at that point anymore. If you keep letting me down over and over and over again, it's done. And I guess I start to think, when it comes to Josie and Alex, I start to question, did they really see their own true value, or was that masked by the men that they decided to be with? Did these men that they're with, did they make them feel so low about themselves that they couldn't really be great without them? But I don't know. I mean, they both definitely have different stories and their takes, but I could definitely see Walter. Like I said, they shape him towards the end as being a good guy, but I could definitely see him manipulating Josie in a way of like always needing him. So when Josie and Walter get home, Walter talks to Josie and says, "Hey, like that Alex girl, oh, I forgot a part." So, because this is important, when Alex is giving a tour to Walter at the podcast room, Josie was supposed to like wait somewhere else in the kitchen or something, but Josie is literally outside the door. And Alex's son ends up fessing up to that he's like, I saw that lady outside the door listening to like you and Walter in the room. And Alex isn't really saying anything incriminating, but Walter is like, Alex, like, do not trust Josie. Like, she's a pathological liar. I also forgot to mention, I think there's an interview with Josie's mother, and now I can't remember if that was before or after Walter coming over. I think they might have interviewed Pat. So Pat is Josie's mom. I think they ended up interviewing her before Walter comes over, and Pat kind of says the same thing about Josie. that she's like a liar and just like, what do you see in her? Like, you seem like such an extravagant person. Like, what the hell do you see in my daughter? And even Josie's husband is essentially saying the same things. Like, what do you see in her? Like, why do you want her on your show? And like, you shouldn't trust her, which that's concerning. I don't know if someone's romantic partner, but then it's tough too, because I don't know how much I would believe that coming from someone who's a literal pedophile. Like, I wouldn't trust a pedophile, so that one I could see Alex getting snowed a little bit, but to also be told that Josie was listening outside the door, that's a red flag as well. That definitely is a little suspicious, and I would have looked more into that. So then Josie and Walter go back home. Josie admits that she heard Walter and what he was saying to Alex, and that Alex is her friend and he's like messing it up by just being himself. And Walter does kind of drop a little bit of a truth bomb to Josie and say, like, Alex is not your friend. Like, she is going to interview you, get her story that she needs, and drop you. And honestly, that was Alex's plan. Like, Alex saw her as a guest on her show, and she wasn't planning on moving forward with a friendship here. She already was a little skeeved, but she was pushing through so much just to get this story that she believes is going to be gold for her podcast. So Josie and Walter, they end up fighting. They don't really show what happened in the fight, but all of a sudden we cut back to Alex getting someone knocking on her door, ringing the doorbell, and it's Josie. And Josie's claiming that Walter attacked her and she doesn't feel safe, and she wonders if she can stay there for the night. And Alex agrees. Nathan does not like this at all. So Alex ends up, after Josie stays the night, and meanwhile, when Josie stays the night, she doesn't leave. Like, she's still kind of like doing that whole like slowly waking up, and I don't think she was showing signs that she was leaving anytime soon. I think she was going to try to stay there as long as she could. And Alex, I don't think really noticed that from the start. She notices that later on, but Alex talks to the school secretary because Josie mentioned that, oh, her daughters went to the same school as Alex's kids, and Alex's kids are a lot younger. They're, can't remember their exact ages. They're not really in the book much, but they're like, I want to say elementary school age or something. Like, it can't be, or like low junior high. Like, it can't be anything super older, I don't think. Like, they sound very young. And meanwhile, Josie's daughters are in their early 20s. So the school secretary apparently mentions that those kids seemed a little bit troubled, and one of them Roxy got into a fight with a girl named Brooke, and Brooke comes back into the story a couple times, but that, those two got into a fight. So like the kids seem weird and they seem like trouble. And then there's some neighbor's kid that Alex ends up talking to as well, and says that it seemed like the family was troubled. There's a lot. I'm just gonna say it. Like, if it was me and this person's mother, their husband, and just all other people that have dealt with this individual and her family, they've all said they're bad news. I mean, their own mother and husband, and then these random strangers that don't even know Josie personally, they're all saying like she's weird or there's something off. I would get the fuck out of there. I'd get the hell out of Dodge. Like, there's just no way I would have kept going with this podcast personally. Like, it's too creepy. There's too many. It's more than coincidental at this point. So Alex asks Josie about her daughter Roxy and this Brooke girl and what happened. And Josie said that they were friends. And then she drops this bombshell about Walter and Brooke. And the way that it's worded also makes me uncomfortable. She essentially said that Walter slept with Brooke. And to me, I take that as Walter molested Brooke and groomed her, because that's not consensual sex. Brooke, once again, like, this is a minor, and this is showing that there's a pattern. I'm not gonna lie, like, they don't really claim if this is a lie or not. Well, I guess towards the end they really do try to frame Walter as like a good guy and that he didn't do this to Brooke, but this is a lie, or a potential lie, that I would have believed because of him getting with Josie. And I'm sorry, like, it's just not, oh, well, the teenager wanted me. No, that is never okay. And that is just not possible. So then after that weird conversation and bombshell, then Alex is making Josie's bed, which I I think Josie's at work maybe, that's why she's out of the house. I can't remember why she was out of the house, but Josie does work as, like, some sort of upholster or something. Alex ends up finding this blood-stained key. Now, once again, this is just another creepy red flag, another creepy sign that I would have been like, "What the hell is this?" I would have either asked Josie about it, or I would have been like, "Girl, you gotta go." Like, which I'm sorry, like, you let this woman stay, she's staying more than one night, and I get it. You're viewing this as she's potentially a victim of domestic abuse that you were told, you don't actually know, because like, Alex is asking Josie if she's talked to Walter, if Walter's tried contacting her, and Josie's like, no, he hasn't, which that's weird. That's also very weird. And that definitely showed me, well, there's a reason he's not contacting her, an obvious reason. But you let this woman stay day after day after day. You're getting this creepy vibe. How could you let this woman into your house and stay overnight and, like, be around your kids? It's one thing if it was just her and Nathan in the house, but you're putting your kids at danger, like, any moment, which this doesn't happen. But Josie could have kidnapped one of the children and ran off with them. Like, you just never know. People are nuts. So that's something that I personally don't really respect about Alex, that she just really threw the caution to the wind. And online, I think people were wondering too, like, why did Alex ignore all of these signs and these potential red flags? And my immediate answer to that is, I think I don't th or not think that I don't think Alex has gone through enough struggles in life. She didn't have to worry about finances. She has a successful podcast. She has a husband who has a good real estate job and doesn't have to worry about spending or money or anything like that. And they don't really mention her going through any personal struggles really until what she's going through in this book and what she goes through later. So I honestly don't think she had enough struggles and life experiences or negative life experiences to make her more cautious about people. Because I think if she did, she would have been more adamant about getting Josie the hell out of her house. So now we get to the part of the story where Nathan's like, yo, Alex, like, she's got to go. Josie's got to go. She's been here too long. Tell her she's got to leave Saturday, and use this excuse of your sister's coming over to stay for the weekend. Like, an excuse is like, we don't have enough room, because Josie discovers that, oh, there's actually like a spare bed in the study that she could stay. Like, Josie's really trying to stay in this house. And she knows that Nathan is the driving force behind getting her out. And I don't think Josie ever planned on leaving. I think she wanted, like, this fantasy life of, like, living with Alex and the kids the rest of her life, and essentially just, like, abandoning her family, because Josie's home life, she has Walter that she's feeling unsatisfied with. Roxy had ran off. I don't think I mentioned that previously, but Roxy just ran off. Josie doesn't even know if she's alive anymore. Like, what the hell happened there? I was suspicious that she killed Roxy. That's not what happens, but I didn't know what the heck happened there, because I'm like, your kid's just gone and you're not trying to find her. That's weird. And then Erin is the other daughter, and she's like a gamer and she never leaves her room. And Josie leaves bottles of baby food outside the door. Like, she almost checks on Erin from time to time, and then she never does, which was also weird. And no offense, it just, to me, I just didn't think Josie was really a good mom. Now you could argue that maybe Alex wasn't being the best mom, but at least her kids were, I guess, somewhat, like, healthy, and I guess somewhat safe. But I don't know, that could have been changed very quickly in, like, the blink of an eye. She was very lucky that that's not what happened to her kids. But yeah, I mean, Josie does not seem like the best partner or the best mom. So weirdly enough, Josie doesn't put up a fight about leaving the house, even though she kind of knows all these little background details that are going on. She decides to leave, which did surprise me a little, but also that was suspicious as well. Josie ends up following Nathan out to, like, the bar, the club, wherever Nathan typically goes with his friends. He has a friend named Gio, which isn't really that important. There's a couple other guys there as well. Josie ends up following Nathan and hears Nathan talking about, like, the house guest from hell to his friends, and they're laughing about it. And Josie is like, this man is a piece of trash, which one could argue that regardless of what happens to Nathan in this book, which we'll get to, I personally didn't really like Nathan. I thought he was treating Alex like complete garbage. He wasn't respecting her. She obviously didn't want to be with someone who was who was just like abandoning her like this. But also, Nathan definitely had an alcohol problem, is something that you notice in this book. But also, he never admits to that, which also bothered me. But I guess maybe that's a little bit realistic. So then there's a character that comes into this, and her name is Caitlin. And I don't like Caitlin. I mean, I don't like a lot of characters in this book. Like, I don't like Walter. I don't like Nathan. I don't like Caitlin either. I guess Caitlin was a friend of Josie's back then. And Caitlin is this aspiring actress. Josie hires her. She wants to pay her like $1,000 or something to lure Nathan to a hotel. And then Josie will let her know what to do after. So they never 100% show us if Nathan was ever cheating on Alex or not, which if I was Alex, that would definitely be something that I would be assuming was going on. But I find it suspicious that Caitlin goes to this bar because of Josie and gets close to the guys and asks Nathan to go to this hotel room with her. And to me, like, with Nathan following her, and they do claim that he's so intoxicated he doesn't know what he's doing, but I still find that very suspicious because, like, why is he following a random woman that he says is pretty or finds attractive? To me, that's very suspicious. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually was cheating, but they claim in the story that he wasn't. I just find that very hard to believe. But Nathan goes to the hotel room with Caitlin, and they end up trashing it. I guess there's a part where Nathan wants to go home and he wants to go back to Alex because once again, he promised Alex that he wasn't going to get fucked up and go back home on time, but he doesn't. And they try to blame that on because of this whole plan that Josie concocted and like was kidnapping Nathan essentially. But my thing is, Nathan wasn't coming home anyway, but they wanted us to believe like, oh, this time it was different. But like, he was doing this all the time too. Like, I don't believe that just out of all the times, oh, like he was really going to change this time without any sort of adequate help from AA. Like, Nathan definitely needed some help, and it didn't ever look like Nathan was trying to get help. And there's parts in the end of the book where they're trying to frame Nathan as a good guy and they're trying to frame Walter as a good guy. And I just have a problem with both of those because at the end of the day, Nathan was a shit husband and Walter was a shit human being. Now, did they both deserve to die? Nathan, no. Walter, I definitely don't feel as bad. So, yes, plot twist here. Josie was not attacked by Walter, Josie killed Walter, and Aaron was a witness to that. Josie ended up tying Aaron up, which that just really blows my mind and definitely shows that she's a piece of shit mother. She literally left Aaron there to die. And Aaron, which I forgot to mention earlier, Aaron is someone who comes off having some sort of disabilities. And yeah, it's really fucked up that she tied her daughter up to a chair, literally left her with no food or water. And there's a part later on that's revealed in the book that Erin, the way that she survived, because she was like in a coma or she was under for a while after they end up rescuing her. Like, she was very lucky to be alive. And the only reason that she survived was because she was sucking on the end of a mop that was still damp to get water. And to me, that's absolutely insane. And I don't know how anyone could have sympathy for Josie, regardless of what happened at that point. But Alex realizes that Nathan's gone missing because now instead of like a bender that typically he would come home the next day, like he hasn't been home in a few days. So something's off. And then she also notices that Josie hasn't been trying to contact her and that she vanished as well. So she's kind of starting to put two and two together about like what the hell is going on here. She's looking up certain things. For example, she finds out that the hotel reservation, it was made under a payment or under a debit card with Aaron's name on it. So like it's Josie's daughter's name. So Josie, which you find out like Josie ended up taking her daughter's debit card and like information and was essentially using that information so people wouldn't catch on. that it was Josie, which I'm like, are you dumb? Because they eventually go to the house and they find Walter dead and Aaron's tied up. So obviously Aaron's not doing any of this. So then this random appearance of Roxy happens. Like Roxy just shows up, and I don't even remember if it's because Aaron was in the hospital or what, but she just shows up towards the end of the book and she ends up visiting Aaron in the hospital to see if she's okay. She ends up talking to Alex and she claims that no, like Brooke and I weren't friends. We were more than friends. We were lovers and we were supposed to go to prom together. Brooke had disappeared. I think I forgot to mention that part that Roxy and Brooke did fight, but then Brooke ends up disappearing during prom. Roxy was supposed to be going with Brooke to prom. And she explains that their father, Walter, never harmed any of them and that he never slept with Brooke. I forgot to mention too, I think there was another, besides him sleeping with Walter, Josie also accused Walter of sleeping with Aaron. And like I said, these are the lies that I probably, well, potential lies, because they say they're lies, but it's hard for me not to believe that those things could have happened. But they do say in the story that no, like Walter, the dad, was getting up in the middle of the night to game with Aaron because Aaron was a game. She was like a streamer for gaming and she was really well known, I guess. And Walter was like the shtick with it that like the dad, it'd be like a daughter dad thing. So maybe, there wasn't any sort of sexual assault there. But like I said, with just knowing who Walter was as a person and how he met Josie, it's just hard for me to believe. But also, we're finding out that Josie is somewhat of a compulsive liar and kind of living in her own delusions. So it's really tough to determine like who's lying here, and they definitely show that Josie's most likely the one lying about most of the stuff, if not all of it. Alex ends up talking to Pat while they're finding Nathan because she just wants to try to get some answers. And this is when Josie's mom admits that she was actually dating Walter first. And I'm like, oh my God, this man is horrible. Like, he had this wife with two kids. And I don't think I mentioned it, but they live in Canada or something. But Walter was Walter had this family, and then he actually got with Josie's mom and then got with Josie. I just, not only are you pedophile, but like you're a cheating piece of shit. I don't care if you freaking played Overwatch with your daughter, like you're a piece of crap. And Pat, and this is the part of the book where Pat tells Alex that the reason why she wasn't with Walter anymore was that Josie seduced Walter. And like I said before, I have a huge problem with that statement. I could understand a character feeling that way. I just really hope Lisa Jewell doesn't actually feel that way and that minors can seduce adults and supposedly have all that power, because at the end of the day, the adult has the power in that dynamic. So while Nathan is still missing, and at this point, it's like it doesn't look good for Nathan, and plot twist, it's not. Nathan is dead at this point, and he was brought to a cabin, which I'll get into that in a second. But Alex is just trying to figure out what could have happened. Like where could my husband be? And like, was it Josie? And she's like still unsure. And I just find that to be insane. Like, obviously, Josie had something to do with this, whether she murdered him or was part of something. There's some theories later on that would have been really cool if they did for the ending. But Alex is listening to these interviews and she finally hears a part where Josie tells her that Alex would be better off without her husband, and was quoting that other podcast interview where that woman felt better without her abusive husband. And yeah, so Alex is like, "Oh my God, like Josie kidnapped my husband." And the reason why I hate Caitlyn so much, after everything, and this is towards the end as well, Alex and Caitlyn end up talking, and Caitlyn is just very she says sorry about everything, but if it wasn't for Caitlyn, well, I mean, at the end of the day, if it wasn't for some of Alex's actions, Nathan wouldn't be dead. And they end up finding him dead at a cabin. And it was all like, obviously Josie was the murderer, and she even denies it, which is gold. It just, I think it really plays true to Josie. I think Josie was written well in the type of character that she's supposed to be, where she like literally does not take responsibility for a lot of actions in her life and was always the victim and was able to paint herself that way. But I don't like Caitlyn because if Caitlyn didn't do this whole thing with Nathan, he probably would still be alive. There was just, I don't know, if I was Caitlyn personally, I would have found the request to be a little bit weird. Like, oh, you're gonna, I guess it was painted to her as that Josie said that Nathan's a cheater and wanted proof of that to show Alex. But still, just like the vibe that was happening and how the hotel room was being destroyed, I don't know how Caitlyn really fell for this. She was so distracted by the money than the vibe of the situation. And she even thought Josie was off a little bit. So I don't know. Like, all these people thought she was off, yet people trusted Josie. Like, I guess she's just that good of a master manipulator. I don't know. But eventually, Nathan's body is found. He is found dead, unfortunately. And then Alex finally, she's been talking to the police for a while through all this, and she never thought to give them that key until now for some reason, meaning that bloody key that she found that Josie hid, which also was kind of weird to me. I don't know why Josie hid it there. I originally thought Josie hid it there because she was going to frame Alex, but that's not the case at all. It's not what ends up happening. It's a key to like this storage unit, and then when they go there, they end up finding Brooke's body, which then ends up revealing that Josie killed Brooke. Now, there's also some theories to that, including like at the very end of the book, but I'll get to that in a second because what ends up happening here is they find Brooke's body and they're doing interviews with people related to all of them. And Alex does an interview about selling off all these interviews and making a documentary for Netflix. And that's why there was all these Netflix interviews throughout the book, because Alex ended up selling the rights to the podcast, which I didn't think about at the time when I was reading it. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, that is almost very insensitive, or at least the way that she ended the show and did all this, because like your husband died in all of this and like so many people were harmed, and you're just like, ah, I'm gonna make a buck off of it. I don't know. I don't know if I would want to publicize my husband's death like this, and honestly to just show like how much of a fucking idiot I was to believe this stranger and let them into my home. But neither here nor there. So the very ending of the book, Erin ends up recovering, which was Josie's daughter. Roxy and her decide to live together or something, and Josie's still on the run. They don't end up catching her, which they'll show some time periods like years later, and she's definitely like weary about getting caught. Josie is, but they literally don't catch her in this book, which was also very disappointing. I mean, I guess that happens, but I do find it kind of weird how like no one recognized Josie, and I think she changed her look a little bit, but I don't know. Just weird to me. Like I don't know. I feel like the police really dropped the ball here. And then on top of it, to add insult to injury, she ends up sending Alex a letter saying that Nathan's death was an accident, which that part was hard for me to believe because Nathan and her fucking hated each other. So that, I think at that point, that's when you realize, okay, Josie is definitely lying about quite a few things. There's something very interesting at the end where Josie recollects Brooke's death and remembers it as Roxy killing her, because like they said they got into a fight, but that Roxy accidentally killed Brooke, and Josie essentially, her and Walter ended up covering it up. And a lot of people I think wrote that off as that Josie was just delusional. But for me, I definitely have my own take on that. Part of me wants to think that Josie was delusional, and then another part of me thinks that that piece could actually be true, because this whole family had an off vibe to them. I wouldn't be surprised if the daughters were fucked up too. And I just think about it too, like, why would Roxy run away? And that would make sense for her running away if she killed someone and hid out essentially. And to be honest too, like Josie did murder, Josie murdered, like she's a murderer, and she harmed her daughter Erin, and she killed Walter, and she just definitely comes off as somewhat of an evil person for sure. But I do still think that Josie is a victim to grooming, and I could believe that because of her upbringing of just never being good enough for her mom and feeling like she had to be with this much older guy, and her trying to impress people like Alex, that she's interesting enough, and just there's a lot of people pleasing behaviors there. So I wouldn't even be surprised if she was also trying to please Roxy, her daughter, and just please her family as much as she can. because I was getting that vibe throughout the book as well. So I wouldn't even be surprised if she took the cover for that, but they definitely want you to wonder at the end, like, huh, did Roxy actually kill Brooke, or was Josie is that just another person that Josie killed because she's psychotic? So I'm revisiting the book club questions here, and I think I actually went over a lot of this stuff unintentionally because one of them was, what about a shared birthday might make you feel bonded to someone? And like I said earlier, I don't think anything really makes me feel bonded to someone that's a birthday twin. So yeah, I addressed that. And I guess some people would feel differently about that. I mean, it's way different when it's like a twin sibling or something, but this is not the case. Another question was, as Alex learns increasingly dark details about Josie's life, she is disturbed but doesn't intervene nor stop the podcast interviews. Do you think Alex should have done something? And yeah, I stated that throughout the whole podcast. I mean, actually, yeah, literally throughout this whole podcast. It's a podcast talking about another podcast. What a weird world. But I described that throughout this episode that I don't know why Alex didn't intervene sooner, besides maybe just being naive to the situation, not going through enough dangerous situations, I guess. I don't know. But I think also with like some of the stuff, especially finding a bloody key and knowing that she like stole some of my stuff. I mean, I think that's some rights to call the police, and Alex did not do that. She gave the key very, very late in the story. I mean, that was weird. I definitely would have went to a police station for that. And maybe trying to get Josie some sort of psychiatric help as well. I mean, especially like if someone came to me and they said they were attacked by their husband, that's just another part I would have intervened and called the cops. And by when Josie was saying things like, "Oh no, like don't get the police involved," that's just a red flag as well to me. The last question, though, I guess we could go over is that Josie said to Walter, so this was after the dinner, and this is why Josie and Walter ended up fighting. She said to Walter that she's going to tell Alex what they did to the girls. Now, this could be interpreted in a lot of different ways because it made you think, well, maybe it's what they did to the daughters. This could also make you think that that whole thing with Brooke was true and that that actually did happen, and maybe she was going to confess that they killed Brooke or like they covered the murder of Brooke. Also, she could have confessed just something that was like completely delusional on her end, and maybe Walter was afraid of that because obviously Walter was against this, and Walter does end up saying that Alex is going to call the police if Josie confesses anything with that. So with his reaction being that way, that makes me think that maybe that very last event actually did happen. I guess that's why I could believe that maybe they covered up a murder and that Roxy was the murderer there, but that Josie murdered the other people. But it's still very murky water. So to reiterate one more time, besides the grooming, I also felt Nathan's alcoholism was sort of brushed to the side because at the very end too, there's a lot of details about like at Nathan's service, how like he was a good guy, and Caitlin was saying like, oh no, he never would cheat on you. He was wondering where you were the whole time. And it's tough for me because people who go through addiction definitely need help and they're definitely human beings still, but I don't know, the way they pinned it, it just they almost gaslit Alex, or they made Alex believe like, yeah, he just had a problem and that any of the shitty behavior that he did to her was excusable. And I just don't agree with that. I feel like that, yes, get people help who have addiction issues, but also there needs to be some sort of accountability there as well. And once again, for probably the 17th millionth time, they really pushed aside the whole grooming thing, and I had a big problem with that. So here were some of the theories that people had online that a lot of these I really didn't even think about that could have happened. One of them was someone thought that because some people were arguing about the ending because it seemed very straightforward, like Josie doesn't get caught, she was the murderer, people suspected that, of course, and people thought there was going to be another like big twist in there. So one thing that people were theorizing was that Alex and Josie were actually related. That would have been interesting. Like if I don't know, like if Josie was like some aunt to Alex, or if they were like long lost sisters, if they're switched at birth. I did think that was maybe going to be a thing, but the way that they described them, I was thinking there's no way they're going to mistake them in that way. But I don't know. So I definitely could have saw that being a theory. Some people had theorized that Walter was actually Josie's father and her husband. Oh my god, that would have been absolutely disgusting. I think they actually should have put that in there. They don't I just realized they don't talk about Josie's father at all. They don't end up mentioning him, or maybe they did very quickly, and I can't even remember what they said about him. But, oh, yeah, that would've it already is a gross situation. I think that would have really added to the gross factor if Josie was like, "Yeah, like, he's my dad that was with my mom, but I married him anyway." Like, ooh, that would've been fucked up, but it would've been great storytelling. So this was just something that another reader pointed out, and I didn't notice this until after I read it too. So, like I mentioned way earlier, that Alex has 2 kids, and I knew Leon was the son. I actually can't even remember the daughter's name. It might be Eliza. It's not important. I didn't notice until after. Someone pointed out that Alex definitely showed more favor towards Leon. They have more interactions. They don't even show interactions between her and Eliza. And this reader was wondering if there was like a complicated relationship between Alex and the daughter. And yeah, that definitely could have been delved into. Unfortunately, it wasn't in this book. But yeah, that was something I didn't catch on to, that they could have definitely twisted this around. Another theory that this would have made it very interesting as well, and I wouldn't have even been surprised if they did this. I think this maybe could have even elevated the story a little bit, and that's if Alex was part of Nathan's murder. And I mean, there's motive there. Like, she was getting really pissed off about all these benders, and I would I to be honest, I mean, I'm not trying to diminish murder or death here or like justify it in any way, but like I could see that being a cause to her breaking and being like, okay, screw this, like let's get him, sort of thing. And that this whole like podcast thing could have definitely turned into something else in a way where they almost like became accomplices of one another. And maybe then Alex could have realized later on, oh shit, like I went too far. I went way past the climax, past the point of return, and like, who even am I anymore? And I think that could have been very interesting as well for the story. There was another reader theory about someone having a split personality scenario because there was so many similarities between Alex and Josie, and that almost them saying like there weren't actually two people, like this all could have been one person. And that would have been a very fascinating theory as well, that I definitely wouldn't have even thought of, if like someone was literally living two different lives, or if they were living one life but then they literally were fantasizing to like this whole other upper class life. That would have been a very interesting twist as well, but that didn't happen. Essentially, this book is kind of showing that Josie was a sociopath and took advantage of Alex. I think that's like one of the main messages in this book. So I guess my word of advice there is, if someone comes up to you and says they're your birthday twin, maybe don't let them into your life like Alex let Josie in, because you just don't know people. Like, this is personally, this is where like you get a coffee first with someone, and then you just like you really let time be a decider here, and you really get to know people. And if any of those like weird red flag events start coming up, like I always, my gut is like 95% right. I feel about when it comes to like intuition. I never ignore your gut, never ignore your intuition. If something feels wrong, you get out of there, because Alex was feeling, I think she was feeling that quite a few times with Josie, and just ignored that. So that is it for None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. Before I forget, I got to get to my star rating. And like I said, this was tough for me because of a couple of those themes, but overall this book I thought was an amazing read. The ending didn't personally disappoint me as much as it did others out there. I originally gave the book a 4.75 out of 5 stars. But like I said in the last episode, I like to round those up. So I did round it up to 5 instead of rounding it down to 4. I thought Lisa did a great job with this book. And after reading this one, because it was my first book by her, I definitely will be reading more Lisa Jewell, and there should be more Lisa Jewell books coming onto the podcast. So that will be exciting. I want to thank all of you guys for listening, and definitely let me know what you think of this book. If you loved it, if you hated it, if you felt man in the middle about it, I definitely want to hear your thoughts. It would be amazing if you subscribe to the show, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any streaming service that you're finding the show. It would be wonderful if you subscribe to Frank's Fiction. To stay in tune with any of the new episodes coming out, I also have social media that I can't believe I didn't say until just now. But if you want to follow my Instagram, it's at Franks underscore fiction. That's FRANKS underscore FICTION. Stay tuned for more book reviews, my thoughts on them, and I'm going to hint that there might be some author interviews on here. So stay tuned for that as well. Have a super special, awesome day. Happy reading, and bye.